Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has told Russia's Vladimir Putin that the West is trying to destabilize his country. The two leaders have been holding talks in the Russian resort of Sochi following last week's forced landing of a Ryanair flight over Belarus. This and the detention of an opposition blogger have caused an international outcry and led to EU sanctions. President Lukashenko said he had brought documents proving that the EU is trying to, quote, rock the boat in Belarus. We're now joined by Moscow Times journalist Felix Light. Felix, how much has this meeting behind closed doors to do with the Belarus flight diversion last week?
Well, Gerhard, on paper, actually not that much at all. Lukashenko is a regular visitor to Russia and has been since he was almost swept from power last August in some quite extraordinary protests. He's regularly in Russia meeting Putin and asking for sort of more financial support and more political support. Ostensibly, the agenda of this meeting was to discuss economic cooperation. But I think it's quite clear that the main item on the agenda will be the dramatic events at Minsk airport last Sunday and the consequences of that, which is essentially Belarus's almost complete isolation from the outside world and the collapse of relations with Europe. So even if the meeting was not initially called in response to this, it's quite clear that in hosting Lukashenko in Sochi, Russia is sending a signal that it's certainly not, at least not cutting ties with Lukashenko, who's looking increasingly isolated in Minsk.
So what's Putin's position on the interception of that plane, the arrest of Protasevich? Is he unconditionally backing Belarus?
Well, the Russian position from the start has been rather murky, actually. There was initially some speculation that perhaps the Russian security services had some kind of direct or indirect role in what happened. But actually, the sort of noises we've heard from the Russian state have been quite equivocal. There's been not so kind of a rush to endorse what Lukashenko has done. And so there's been a little bit more of sort of nuance, I would say. It is, however, clear that Russia is sort of signaling to the world with this meeting in Sochi, and indeed Putin is signaling to the world that he still sees Lukashenko as a sort of a friend in good standing, an ally, and a partner that can be dealt with. So it seems that at a time when much of the world is sort of writing off Lukashenko as a sort of an illegitimate president, Russia at least is supporting him in his office, if not supporting his actions per se, I think.
So how do you think the pressure from the West, how will it influence Lukashenko's course of action?
Well, it's without a question, Belarus faces an acute financial crunch in relation to what has happened. These sort of bans on EU overflights of Belarus will hit the Belarusian treasury quite severely. We're also likely to see new sanctions, perhaps on imports of agricultural machinery or of potash, which is mined in Belarus. But there's a big sort of asterisk here in the sense that the only country that really influences Belarus today is Russia. Belarus and Lukashenko are profoundly dependent on Russia for their political survival, for their economic survival. And so what happens today is really crucial, I think, in deciding the fate of Belarus and of this part of Eastern Europe. The EU has a great deal of influence, but its influence can only go so far if Putin is behind Lukashenko foursquare.
Journalist Felix Light in Moscow there. Thank you, Felix.